All right, everybody, here we are back again for part 2 of auditions, what to do when you get to the camp. So welcome back. If you watched the first episode, we hope you enjoyed it. We hope you found it to be helpful. So we hope that this next episode will be nice and helpful
Hopefully
for you.
in the time that we've spent between releases of these 2 episodes, you've started trying to apply some of the tips that we've given out, right?
Absolutely.
No better time to start than the present.
Exactly. You know, and we're dropping these in October, so you only got a month left to kind of prepare yourself and kind of get in there. So, and don't think that's not enough time. 30 days is plenty enough time.
Oh yeah.
To really get in there and make a huge difference in your in your playing and your preparation, your physical skills, and all those kind of things, right? So now we're at the end. We're getting into audition times. And going
what to
out
actually expect and to bring when you show up to a camp.
To a camp, right? Exactly. Before we get into it, like as always, make sure you click like, hit subscribe. Send this to your friends and family members. Tell them that Mike and Robbie said, "Hey, what's up?"
Hey girl,
hey girl, how's it going? So here we are. We'll get into it.
Yeah,
Go
start where
ahead.
we kind of left off in a way.
Yeah.
Right. Because I do think if you've prepared properly, the most important thing that you can bring with you to auditions is the right attitude.
Right, which is where we left off in the last episode.
Yeah, right.
Which was the attitude.
Yeah, right. So just to recap, because it's been a little bit of time, a brief recap, right? You want to show up and you want to bring well-earned confidence, but also the attitude of working hard and being humble.
Right.
Right. That's the most important thing you can show up with. Do not show up with an ego, because they'll be able to sniff that out, and
Instantly.
you'll be on the bad list, on the naughty list, right?
Absolutely. Not only that too. It's not just about some of the things we talk about in the preparation phase, which is being mindful of yourself and being those things too. Remember that everybody else, you're not there just to impress instructors. And you have to not impress them, but you have to show them who you are. But you're also there to there's going to be vets that are there too, that are they're looking at you, right? And if you're not jiving and vibing, with your etiquette and your attitude, the way that they kind of can interact with you in a very positive way, the staff is going to pick up on that part of it too.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
And they're going to go, this is a kid that can't work with the people who we already
they're not
know are
gonna
coming back.
Fit into what we're asking. Right?
Exactly.
What we ask of members.
Exactly. So the thing being, we're going to talk about the social preparedness of it a little bit later, but it kind of falls into the attitude of, again, not being over egotistical, being humble, and going in there with I'm here to learn and offer what I have to offer to this organization.
Yeah.
Whatever it is.
You're going to make impressions on people and be able to socialize, but the first thing that's going to happen at any given time is you're going to show up, you're going to get ready, and then you're going to have a block.
Yep.
Right? Either a morning block on Saturday or an evening block on Friday, depending on when you get there, right?
Right.
And afterwards is when you're going to be able to socialize. So the first impression that you're going to make is about the kind of attitude you bring when you are doing drum corps.
Right.
Right.
Yep.
So that kind of thing, like I said, it makes a good impression on the staff and the other members. And also importantly, it's just the best thing that you can do to be the best member you can.
It really is.
Right. That's why staff look for it. They don't just look for it because it pleases them.
Yeah.
Right.
This pleases me.
Yes. Continue.
Yes.
Right. They do it because that's what the best drum corps members in the world, that's the kind of attitude that they bring.
Yeah, that's what they have. Exactly. That's an attitude of sustainment, that you're going to need to sustain throughout the entire season. And if you come in with it at the beginning, it's once again something they don't necessarily need to teach you, because you already generally have the idea of what it is, and they're going to refine that piece a little bit for you. I think, when it was again with attitude is, if you've never done drum corps before, this is your first foray into, like, you're showing up to membership day or their whatever they call their camps, the very first one of the season. Showing up with any kind of idea that you think you know what you're doing is really not the right idea, right? It's really showing up and going. You can't be over. It's a balance. It's this fine line of being confident.
You want to show me confident.
You want to be confident in the things that you can do, but you don't need to tell anybody about it, if that makes sense.
Yes.
Right? You don't be like, oh, I know what I'm doing.
Yeah,
Oh,
and
I've done this before. My high school does this.
Yeah, I think
down.
the important distinction that I would make, I think, to maybe delineate where the line for that balance is, is you want to show up being confident and maybe feeling like you're knowing what you're doing, but not feeling so confident that you're not willing to learn.
Yes,
Right?
correct.
The most important thing you can do with a skill set when you're at audition camps is to be open to learning and changing and to be receptive to feedback.
Yes.
Right?
Oh my God.
To-
Look, that's one of those things too. That is an attitude piece, right? Is
Mhm.
feedback. And if you are not just feedback directly aimed at you, but feedback directly aimed at everybody. Right?
Yeah.
So it's the same idea, right? If your attitude is one where you're, not I don't want to say hyper focused, but if you're not focused on what's going on, and if you're not attentive to
Yeah.
what the block is teaching you, or whatever that is that's there, and you are not trying to take in and absorb and go, if somebody over here is getting talked to and said, "Oh, this is what's going on," like you need to focus and do these things and put your arms like that. You should be listening to that
Yeah.
so that you can do the same thing. Because if they're telling him to do that or her to do that, they're telling you the same
probably,
thing.
Yeah, you probably
you have to do the
could-
same
could
thing.
benefit.
Right, exactly. You're going to benefit from that information.
Yeah, that was one of the we give advice on a scale from broad to specific. One of the more specific pieces of advice I was going to bring is in your first block and all the blocks, but try to really hone in on this in the first block because it will set your own expectations. Right, show up and for God's sakes, be focused. Right.
Yes.
I know this is hard for some of us, but
Yeah.
make sure you're in that mental game. Right. When you're in block, don't not socialize. Don't be a hermit and cut yourself off. But especially in audition camps, you should show up with the idea of I'm here to do drum corps. I'm here to get a job done, not here to hang out and talk. Because if you're kind of oh, just looking around and oh wow, band, this is so cool. Instead of being focused in on what everyone else is doing, what the instructors are telling you to do, right? And just being locked in.
Right.
You're not going to succeed as much. You're not going to catch those little pieces of feedback. And also, people can see that, right?
Yeah.
An instructor can see, oh, this person doesn't know how to focus and lock in.
Yeah, it doesn't
and
know how to
work
pay
hard.
attention.
Yeah, right?
Yeah, and that could be doubly as hard too, because if you're showing up to camps where you have vets there, they know each other. We are the most guilty two people on the planet of this when we go to sectionals.
I
And other
cannot
things.
stand next to you. Yeah. In
It's
22,
horrible.
I was next to you the whole time. And I'm saying a
It's-
terrible
It is
example.
horrible because all we do is talk to each other and mess around the entire time,
exactly.
especially at membership day. And there's young members there that are we're setting a bad expectation for what it is.
Yeah.
But I will say this is that in the last 2 to 3 years now, 3 seasons now, when there are members that are just quiet,
Mhm.
focused, and ready to learn and do those things, they end up being the best members.
Yeah.
They end
And
up
we
being
see
the
them and
best. Yep.
I'm sure the staff does this, but we have members who are I want that person.
Yes.
That person's locked in.
Because they're locked in, right? And the vets and everything else, they're going to do whatever they're going to do, and they will appreciate you being locked in, right? And then like you said, when the time is appropriate, then you can socialize. It's the green light, red light, theory, right? When
it's the light switch that we talked about.
The light switch. If you cannot turn the light switch on when it's necessary, and then turn it off and relax because you need to do that sometimes, then you need to, that's something that you should have been working on already, but that you need to be focused on while you're there.
Yeah.
If there's a great piece of advice that I think encompasses everything for auditions, is being able to turn on the light switch when necessary and turn it off. Right.
Yeah.
That is the core of how you're going to be successful at an audition.
Initial audition camps, if you're going to err on the side of being more social or more just focused on the job at hand, I would lean towards the latter.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Again, you don't have to be a hermit, but sometimes some auditions, they can be a little cutthroat. I mean, they kind of have to be, right? I mean, and I don't think that's a bad thing.
Right.
Right? We love this activity for the socializing and for the social aspect and the friend and sort of family aspect that it brings. But it's also, especially in a higher DCI core, it's also about, right, competition and skill and how hard can you work?
Yeah.
Right? How much do you want it?
Right.
I remember there being camps where I was I'd be kind of talking to people, like an early Blue Knights camp, and I'd be I'm fighting you guys for a spot technically. I'm in my head, I'm there's a couple spots because there's maybe half the line, if not more, is filled with pretty much guaranteed vet spots already. I'm I'm kind of fighting these people a little bit, right?
Yeah.
So don't be afraid to err on the side of a little more competitiveness and a little bit more quiet focus in the early camps, because then once you lock in your spot, then you can relax a little more,
Right.
and you can the social aspect of it will come.
Yeah, it's
later.
gonna be there, right?
Exactly.
One of the things that I think always is that is looked at, that is this underappreciated thing, is there's always something to do, even outside of the blocks. There's always equipment to load. There's always stuff to move around. There's always other things. Offer assistance, right? Because who is moving
Yeah, I
all
was
that
gonna
stuff
say
around?
that.
Who's
Yep.
the vets are moving all that stuff around, right? I get to know people, like when we have membership day, we're gonna have to load all the horns and everything in, and like that's on the quartermaster, so it's like a pain in the butt, right? I have the last 2 years, or last year specifically, I had members, not there would be members, there are members there to audition, and I had no idea who they were. And they were like, "Hey, I see you moving stuff. Is there any way I can give you a hand?" I didn't ask for it. They just walked up and said, "I'd like to give you a hand." And
Yeah.
I was like, "This guy's my hero," and I was like, "Cool." And I knew that kid's name immediately.
Yeah.
Right. Because he was there helping and being a part of the process of drum corps. Because drum
Yeah.
corps is not just about, practice, 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 perform. That's not it. Right? It's the entire thing. Is can
Yeah.
the organization be successful?
Yep. You're gonna have a crew
People-
job on tour.
Yeah, you will have something to do, right? And can you do it? So, like, there's an easy way to kind of get into the good graces, because you're always going to see the vets are going to be doing those things like your first camp or two,
Yeah.
because they've already done it an entire season, so they know what they're doing. They kind of their core or their tour job is kind of the same thing probably next year, because everybody does the same thing from year to year
Usually,
most of the
yeah.
time, right? And when you can get involved with those people will go and talk well of you to the instructors, people that they know, right?
Yeah,
So
and then you will feel more comfortable, and you will
Yes.
probably perform
Yes.
better, right? Because
Exactly.
you start to feel like you belong
Right.
earlier.
So that attitude going in there, again, being humble, being helpful, and
Yeah.
being receptive, I think is really the biggest part of an audition weekend. And again, I think I said this on my last podcast when I was talking about some of the other podcasts out there. They were talking to people from Phantom specifically, because I watched it last week. It was, those things were brought up each time, and they were the first things that they talked about in that
Yeah.
podcast. Were being receptive, doing those kind of things, and and recovery, I think, was another one, which we'll talk about later. But that's a big part of all those pieces, and it's really an attitude thing. It's not necessarily how well you can march or how well you can you perform musically. That's part of it, but the attitude can't be taught. Right. It's just
Yeah.
something you show up with. Right.
Yeah. It's something you show up with or you work on yourself.
Yes. Yeah. It is an internal thing, right? That is only internal to you, and nobody can really kind of teach you that thing. You just have to do it.
Yep.
Right. And so
Yeah, like I if I had to share a positive story about a boy new rookie from this year, Eli.
oh yeah, I freaking love that guy.
Yeah, right. Like so he showed up. We had a bunch of rookies show up, right? And this was for context for Bucks. This is one of the first years we had an abundance of members, and we had to make cuts basically.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. We made a few. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. In most previous years, for DCI all age, we'd make a few cuts maybe here and there, but
Just show up. You're going to be in a line.
exactly right.
Yeah.
Which
Yeah.
that's another attitude thing. Don't cut yourself.
Oh, for the
right
love
from
of
the just
God.
keep. If you did not get cut, just keep showing up.
Yeah.
Right.
Attitude. Yeah. Have a positive attitude and believe that you're supposed to be there.
But so this was early in one of the winter camps before we even did the formal evaluation process. We had taken a cafeteria and pushed all of the tables to the side to give ourselves a marching space, which means someone at the end of the day has got to come in
put it
and
all
put all
back.
those tables back and
Right,
put them in
right.
the right order and do everything like that, right? I was going over to help with that just because, again, we've been trained,
Just
and most drum corps vets have been trained just find something to do, be helpful for the corps, right? Help the
Right.
corps out. And this rookie, who I've talked to a few times, comes in and not only is like, I'm going to help without even really being asked, or, maybe being asked once because he didn't know that was a job, right? He's like, I'm not only just going to help, I'm going to come in and be like, how do we do this job the best possible?
Ooh,
Like
yeah.
I had a picture of like, and we took a picture so we can set it back up and the right thing. And he like came in and was like, cool, I'm looking at this picture. We should set that table up there. And was like almost taking charge of it
Yeah. Yeah.
in a way, right? Like taking initiative
Yeah, yeah.
is a better term, right? And I tell you, my response to that was immediately like, I want this kid marching.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
want them marching because that is one of the best examples of they've got the attitude for
Yeah,
it. Right. They've got the team effort attitude and the initiative and the motivation that they want to be here and be great.
You took the word right out of my mouth. I was thinking the word team right as you said it. You
Yep.
know, like it really is. It is just this a team like just like any other team is, right? And if you're not part of it and you're just sitting on the sidelines and just watching, what really good are you, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, so I think all those things make sense. It's the really, we talk about it probably the most in this episode is going to be that, and we'll probably circle back to it several times, but
Yeah.
because it really is
I think
the most
attitude's
important thing.
Yeah, I think attitude's going to be the through line. Like we're going to talk
absolutely.
about stuff with music and with visuals and social, but like the through line of everything once you get there, like I can't, we can't tell you to play faster and to
Right.
play more
And then
technically,
you can just do it,
proficiently, right? You're going to prepare as much as you can leading up, and you can work on the technical and the skill set side of things. Once you show up to the camp, it's all based on what you did previously to prepare and what attitude you're bringing while you're there, right?
Yeah,
It's everything.
That's it. That's where you are at that point, right? Like
Yeah.
you said, nobody can make you physically better in that moment, and nobody can make you musically better in that moment. You either prepared or you didn't, right?
Mhm.
And now you're just here doing the best that you can, which is the attitude part. So I
Yep.
totally agree. So I guess that moves into our next thing, right? Which is the musical audition portion of
Yeah.
things. I really do believe, we talked about it in the last episode, that from a brass standpoint, your basic sets of skills are where you have to be at, right? If you play with good tone, right? If you're not the loudest person there, that's okay, right? I would sacrifice volume for bad tone, or for tone, however you want to say it. Having better tone, and they will teach you how to play louder, right?
Yeah.
Being able to is great, but if it can, and you can put air through the horn, but it sounds like, a really a bad winter night. I don't know what else to say,
Yeah.
It's not
Thomas the Tank Engine.
yeah, right. If you're just honking away, that's not the quality of sound. Listen to any drum corps that you've listened to in your life and think to yourself, did any one of those corps make that kind of sound? No, they didn't,
Some
right?
of them.
Yeah, maybe one or two. But the good ones that you really love and you want to emulate, do they sound like that? They don't, right?
Yeah.
It's one big unified sound, right?
Yeah.
So
we talk about balance a lot.
Yeah.
I'm going to say something that it might sound contradictory, but really it's just about finding a balance between these two things, right? Because don't overplay and just sound like crap, right? Play with confidence and play with good tone. The main piece of advice I was going to give from music specifically, do not hide in the sound.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
This would be going too far in the other direction, right? You can go too far in the loud direction. You can sound like a
freight
train,
train.
a freight train, yeah.
yeah.
Or you can go too far in the quiet direction and you hide in the sound, right? Because you're afraid of being heard and having someone, call you out or sound like you're wrong. Right? We see it in so many rookies sometimes they don't know how to play loud, right? Which is one thing, but sometimes it's just a confidence thing, right? I think I've told this story before, but when I showed up in 2018, my first year on Mellow, I was like, I can play this thing, but not super well, but I know how to freaking move air. I know how to move air. And I was like, I basically had, in a sense, no shame about playing. I was like, every time they asked me to play, I'm going to full send it.
Yeah.
I don't care. It was a very new section. So it was basically just like me and 3 others who could play loud.
Right.
And I would show up and I was like basically the only second mellow that could play loud. And I was like, I'm going to blast every note in this thing. Like, I'm going to play with full confidence and full air.
Yeah.
And I got called out. Probably 60% of all the musical comments that we got that year were to me specifically in the mellophone section. That might be an extreme case, but like because I was playing loud, I was getting feedback and I improved a ton, right?
Yeah.
I got to hear and I had to go, cool, that's what I'm doing wrong, right? Because if you're showing up and you're doing something wrong, you're not playing the way that they want you to, they're not going to be able to hear you and improve you and give you that feedback if you don't play with some confidence, right? If you're sitting back and you're scared and you're just letting the other people play around you.
You know what else they get to do? They get to know your name, right?
Yeah.
And I tell you, so and that's a really good point, is that this is where you can show a skill musically that isn't necessarily something that you can prepare for, which is when you make a mistake, right? Where you're overplaying, or maybe you're playing a little too aggressively, or you get corrected for something. How are you going to receive that information, right? It's kind of bleeds into the attitude portion, right? That through line again.
Yeah. How
are you going to receive that information? They essentially say, Robbie, you're playing too loud, and you go, okay, how, should I just pull back maybe 10% a little bit? And they're like, yeah, that's great, do that. Cool.
Yeah.
Okay, too easy.
So like, hey, you're articulating too strongly on this, and you're like,
Okay.
Cool.
Got it. All right. I'll
Got it.
articulate less. And then the next rep, you do it less, right? Don't take away, like, don't go hide. Or like you said, don't go hide and be like, oh my God, somebody said something to me. Now I'm not just going to play.
Yeah.
Right. You play with the correction. Right. And if it's something else wrong and they go, okay, great. Thank you for fixing the articulation, but maybe you could just back off 10%. You know what I mean? You
Yeah.
go, okay, cool. Got it. And you just continuously make that. That means that you are the kind of player, the kind of musician, the kind of person that can take constructive criticism. Right. And then and not only take it, but apply it immediately. That is,
Yeah.
again, a skill set that is very difficult to train once you are there. So they are not looking to take people who are maybe really great players, but can't receive any kind of instruction
Yep.
because there's a limit to what you can grow to, right? When you are capable of receiving information, you are capable of growing to no limit.
Yeah.
Right.
I think that's one of the biggest single pieces of advice in the music and visual side of things. I think it encompasses all of it, right? One of the biggest things any drum corps is looking for is your capacity to learn.
Yes. Correct.
Right? It's not just where you are right now. It's, like you said, what you can grow to.
Right.
Right? When I showed up to my first in-person camp for Nights, I showed up and I played, and I got some feedback, and it was really nice. It was almost like a little 10-minute lesson. Right? I played my etudes, and then the guy was like, "Let me hear you play this, and let me give you some advice, and like try this with your, give me some advice." And he gave me a bunch of feedback.
Okay.
It was basically the same
Yeah.
general feedback that I had gotten from my Boston audition earlier that year, which was like, your technical proficiencies are solid, but we need to see some your tone could use some work.
Yeah,
basically, right?
Sure.
What's your tone development? So he gave me an exercise to do, and I went home, and guess what I did every single day while I was rehearsing? Right? It focused on exactly what he talked about, and I showed up the next camp, and my tone was way better, and then I got a contract.
Yep.
I think in big part because they went, okay, this person improved, right?
Yep.
This person took the feedback they did, they applied it, they were self-motivated,
Right.
and they showed up and they were better, right? That means they can keep growing through the season.
Yeah. I say this all the time, and most instructors really love hearing themselves talk. Because to be a really great musician, I think
shade.
Yeah,
we're one to talk.
Yeah, exactly. I love hearing myself talk, but because they have a skill set, they have a lot to offer, right? And they have a vision, right? Because we're creatives, right? Musicians are creatives.
Yeah.
We have a vision for the future. We have a vision for what it is, and we put our name on these things. So obviously, if I tell you to do something or I ask you to do something, I obviously want you to do that. Right? That don't I can't tell you how many people have said like, oh, they told me, Dan told me I was playing too loud. So I think what he really means is this. No. He means you're playing too loud. Stop trying to overanalyze what's going on. Just listen, right? Just listen to directly what's going on. And, because I say, Daniel Tom was like, I hear what you're saying. I'm not going to do that. And you do so mad at me.
Again, once again, we're somewhat hypocritical sometimes.
Yeah, sometimes.
But also,
when you're
we've
40
also
years
had-
old, you can do that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
When you've had 10 years of experience and you've been self-assessing for those 10 or more years,
Yeah.
right? You start to learn what's and again, this is for full section comments or full hornline comments.
Yeah.
You can learn how to do this. When you're giving individual comments, you should obviously listen.
Right.
Right. But after several years of drum corps, you get to the point where you're like, they gave us a comment, but I know my sound well enough that I'm pretty sure I'm not doing that.
Right.
And even then, I'm sure you and I have done this multiple times where we're like, we'll get say a full mellophone comment. They'll be like, leads, you guys are doing this and that. And then you're like, you bring them over and be like, Dan, was I doing that? Because I don't think I was, but
Right.
if you heard it, you you can double check.
Right.
But while you are new, right? Even if you're a second or third year vet, right? One of the best pieces of advice is if they give broad advice, assume it's you.
Yeah, always assume it's you.
Right.
Absolutely.
Assume it's you and try something different.
And also,
For
too,
God's sakes, try something different.
you should know. Again, we talk about the last episode. We talk about preparing. You should know what your skill sets are.
Exactly.
I know for me personally that I tend to overplay sometimes. Right?
No.
And what me? But not only that, but I overplay in a very bad way too, because I'm one of those people who takes that. And I know better than this. And I don't know why I do it still, but we get a big mellophone comment of mellophones. We need more sound. Don't worry, boys. I got it.
Don't worry, the hero is here.
You know, I will take care of the entire section for us. And I do, and like I know better than that. And Dan knows us well enough to know, because he always looks at both you and I and he goes, not from you two.
Not you two.
And so and it's like oh, that's right. I have to remember that I am playing at the edge of my ability to play loud with good quality sound. And that's where I have to stay. I have to let everybody else pick up the slack, right?
And
so
as a result of that, we know to look out for certain things,
Yes.
right? Like volume is not going to be something that we're lacking in, right? When he says
Correct.
people play louder, you know, we know enough about our own sound to go, it's probably not us. But wait, but if they're talking about like, hey, Millers, this one note is out of tune, I know intonation is one thing that I struggle with, so I go, okay, that might be me,
right.
So I need to check in on that.
For me, it's dexterity. Yeah, if the phrases, if it's like, hey, it's a little muddy and they're behind, it's probably me because I'm a tuba player. So I'm still work on speed. With my fingers and moving air through like slurs, because mellophones play like a billion slurs. So so I know that that's one of my things. So when I know, like, I go, okay, it sounds that way, it's probably me. I will be more hyper focused on that. You know, because I know those things about myself. But again, I know those things about myself because I've practiced for X amount of years. But
and you've been self-assessing.
You could know that too if you take the time before you go to an audition camp and you've been self-assessing properly. You should know what your strengths are. So be leery in the audition process, specifically big grouping processes, right? Where it's the whole horn lines there, or maybe the whole section is just doing whatever you're doing and you're getting feedback. To just be aware of your own personal, you know, improvements and things that you know you do well, and assess them and apply them appropriately.
In 2016, we had John Madewell as our brass caption head. He had a phenomenal top-down brass like educational program built in. And one of my favorite things that he said early on in the year was he was going to do this like almost like a call and response thing where he's like, if I ever ask you guys who the best teacher in the room is, you point to yourself. Right. He was like, you are your own best teaching resource. Right. And they helped hone that and helped, you know, hone those skills. But like, if you can develop those skills of self-critique and self-assessment and self-improvement, like you can't always have a tech in your ear giving you comments the whole time, like I had with Paul for basically the entirety of 2018 because I played so friggin' loud. Right. You're not going to have that. Right. So you have to learn how to improve on your own. Right. And more than likely, you know, at worst, you're going to end up in a better place than you started.
Correct.
At best, techs, even if they're not making direct comments to you, are going to notice that. And they're going to see that you're making steps and strides in self-improvement. Right.
Yeah. If you're playing with good sound and tone and you're doing everything you're supposed to be doing, and then all of a sudden it's getting better, they're going to be like, oh, why did they get better? You know, like techs and instructional staff are always there. They're always looking for what's changing and why it's changing, right? Is it good or is it bad, and all those kind of things too, and they're assessing those things. So preparing musically, there's a lot about what to do when you get there. When you go into your audition, I think like your individual audition, one of the things that people look for is you don't walk in immediately with an excuse. Hey, yeah, my name is so-and-so. I just want you guys know I'm really tired right now. Like that's the worst thing you can do, right?
I'm super beat.
Yeah. Hey, look, I've been playing like a, you know, whatever, like I'm going crazy. Let them decide if you're tired, because look, they know too. If it's the end of Sunday and you're struggling to hit high notes as a trumpet player, like they get it. Yeah. They're not idiots, right? They know that you've gotten beat up, you know, but in conversely, if you've prepared and trained and you have some endurance and you can still do the things necessary, guess what? They're going to look at that as a strength, right? So when you go in there, the best advice I heard somebody give somebody else, and I don't remember where I heard it from, but it was go in with confidence and just a general, like, I don't want to say happiness or joy. Like, don't go in like a crazy person, you know, but like
enthusiasm, maybe.
Yeah, enthusiasm's a good word, but not like an aggressive enthusiasm. Like, hey, everybody, my name's Bow. You know, like you're like, all right, calm down. You just go in with the confidence of, good afternoon, everybody. My name is, you know, Mike, and I'm here to audition on this. Thank you, you know, for the opportunity to just be seen. I appreciate it. It's been a great camp so far. That's a really great opening line, right? And then they're going to be like, hey, man, thanks. You know, let's start with this, whatever that is, right? Whatever that is, and then you just play. If you make mistakes, that's okay. Nobody has perfect auditions. Nobody, you know.
God, mine was not.
No, you know, like I might have. I'll just share
all my higher range notes.
My audition process. It was So I auditioned like I was like the very last tuba player to audition.
Yeah.
Um,
Cadets, this was.
Yeah, cadets, and there was like I think 29 of us, I think, or something like that. I was the last person to go in there, so I had the benefit of having. And again, we didn't get music beforehand or anything else. Like we were given the brass book and like 10 pieces of music, right? And it was like, oh my god. And you know, I kind of knew what we were going to audition on when we went in there because it was the stuff we were working on and it's kind of stuff we were doing. And I walked in and they had their backs turned because that was a weird way they used to do things.
Oh, like blind
Yeah,
auditions?
yeah, blind auditions. So they didn't like, I don't know. So they just wanted to hear your sound, and you didn't even audition. You didn't even introduce yourself. You just walked in and they go, all right, everybody play this part.
Yep.
Okay. So I walked in and I played. I had it memorized at that point. Right, because I had been playing it all weekend. And
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
a tuba part.
It's a
Okay,
tuba
it's
part.
not that hard, right?
You memorized all those B flats?
Yeah,
Wow.
exactly. And so I played it and I did my thing, and they're like, "Okay, thank you." And then they turned around and I saw they didn't have a stand with me, and they were like, "What'd you do with your stand?" And I was like, "Oh, I didn't bring it in."
I hit it.
Yeah, I was like, "Oh, I didn't bring it in," and they're like, "You memorized the entire song?" Because I played like, I don't know, like 50 measures of this thing or whatever it was, and I'm like, "Yeah." I'm like, "It's tuba music," and they kind of looked at me and they were like,
Yeah.
all right, man. They kind of looked at me like, and I said it in a way that was very confident, but like there was an air of probably ego in what I said because I was already sensing that they were pretty impressed with what I was doing. So I was
You
like,
read the room.
yeah, I read the room. I was like, yeah, it's tuba music. I do pretty well. And I was like, this is my 5th year of drum corps. And they're like, oh, okay. And so like it would just, that was like, thank you, I
Yeah.
appreciate it. And I'm like, I'm gonna go ahead and get out of it. And again, I said this before in the podcast, like I was only one of 2 people offered a contract that day out of the entire tuba line. And I think a lot of it has to do with just, I was very quiet. Ironically enough, like I was extremely quiet my entire audition camp. I was there to I wanted it so badly. I wanted to march so badly. And I didn't really care where I marched. I just wanted to march, right?
I want to go somewhere.
I wanted to go somewhere. I mean, I went to New Jersey because it was right down the street because they were still in New Jersey at the time. And, it was right there. I mean, if it was in Allentown like it was for years, I would have been even better because it's 45 minutes from here. But, I went there for the whole weekend and I socialized when I socialized, at the end of the camp, everything was done. And while we were practicing playing, I was just absorbing it, man. I was just so excited, to be a part of the process. And I talked to people when I had the opportunity to, and I just played the best that I could play.
Yeah.
And that's really, I think, the best advice that I think you can give is just be relaxed, be confident. There's no more preparation that you can do. You're going to be whatever it is you're going to be when you get in there.
Yep.
So just do it well, do it recovery, and be humble. Don't apologize for the love of God. Do not apologize for anything. Just be like, excuse me for a second. Do you mind if I start that over again? I think okay, great. Do it one time, maybe. Don't be like, oh, I'm so sorry. I know I could do that better. Like, let me try again,
Yeah,
please.
exactly.
Like,
Start groveling.
don't beg. And it's wild. Like I've seen people do that.
Yeah, I mean, people are anxious or they're nervous, and
for the love of God, don't cry when you go in there. Like
there's no crying in baseball.
Like what happened last year with us. We had people go in there. And this was like the 4th camp we had auditions, right? Because it was like forever after.
Yeah,
that.
it was more like a long drawn out.
Yeah, and it
process.
was more than one. It was not just a person. It was like several people that went in there and they just fell apart. I'm like, it's not that serious, guys.
Guys, it's just band.
It's just band. Like you're supposed to be having a good time here, right? If you can't handle the emotional distress of like a little audition where you're just playing stuff you've been playing and you should have prepared, they're going to look at you and go, maybe next year.
I know, because as
Maybe
we've talked
next year.
about, like tour and drum corps is stressful.
It's very stressful.
It's
Exactly.
hard. You will hit breaking points. You will hit walls.
Yeah, you
Right?
will lose
So
your
if you
shit.
show up and you hit your wall in the audition camp,
yeah.
I mean, I would
How
look at it
many
and be
more
like,
times are
this
you gonna do
person's
it?
not emotionally ready. They're not emotionally
Correct.
mature enough to handle what
This
we're going to be
activity.
throwing at them. It will
Yeah.
be overwhelming and it will be too much for them.
Yeah.
That's what I would think as a staff member.
Yeah,
right?
and it's twofold. That like the staff has to think about the organization and how you're going to, but they're also thinking about your health too.
yeah, it's like, I
They're-
want
they're
to put them
think-
through this. This is hard.
This is very, very difficult. That's why people have PTSD and everything else because they try to do things that they are not ready for. Right.
Yeah.
Because it's just not there, and that's okay. If that is you right now, that's okay. Again, emotional maturity is something you can build over time. Right. But you
Yeah.
have to put yourself in those positions and you have to ask for help and you have to do the things you have to do.
Yeah.
Right?
And I
So-
know, like, you know, it's hard to just tell people to not be anxious about
Sure.
stuff.
Yeah. I get it.
But, you know, if you're a person who really struggles with that and like struggles with the rigors of that, that would be a, you know, maybe a great time to look into an open class or all age class.
Yeah.
That doesn't like, it's not a full 80-day, extremely competitive, sometimes cutthroat and stressful tour.
Right.
Right. You can go to open class and do a shorter tour, right? Or just with a core that's, you know, there are lots of cores that like aim more towards new people to drum corps,
Yeah.
right?
They
That
call
will,
it member experience type stuff.
yeah, right. And we'll take new people,
Mhm.
and it'll be lower stress and be like, we're here more to learn. Yeah, we're here, everyone's there to learn and compete.
Right.
But some people, you know, some
Yeah, there's a
cores will
balance
balance
to
it
that. Sure.
differently.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
There are learner cores, right? Go if you have a few years and you struggle with overstress and anxiety, and you know you don't think you can make it, and you might break down in an audition. Go to an easier core, right, or a core that's less stressful, and like just get some experience going with it, so you can go, oh, it's just band. It's not
Yeah.
that, yeah, like
Yeah, it's not the end of
get
the world.
comfortable with
Just
it,
relax. Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that's so as we move away because we're you know not off topic as we tend to do.
We're tangenting. Yeah.
We went from music and I think we could start talking about the visual aspect of
Yeah,
things.
some specific visual things.
If you listen to the last episode and we told you to prepare physically, this will be the first weekend that you have the opportunity to show people that you are physically prepared, because they do not want you. Bottom line is thinking forward is that they don't want you showing up to
Spring
move-ins
training?
to spring
Yeah.
training not prepared. So if you show up prepared to membership day, all right, you're already ahead of the power. You're probably already ahead
right.
of 25 to 35% of the members that are trying to audition there.
Yeah.
You really do need. So if you're not doing that ahead of time, you're doing yourself a disservice. But
Yeah.
when you get there, you've got to apply that now, right? You have got to. I don't want to say fight because that's such a strong word, but you do. You have to fight through pain, right? And you have to go. This is the moment when I know I need to stand up straight, and I know I need to have my A-frame, and I know I need to perform, right? Because we use that word pretty frequently now, right? This is a performance moment, right? Every moment is a performance moment, right?
Yeah, especially in visual.
Especially in the visual aspect of things, right? You can hide musically in the horn line to some extent, right? Now, DCI world is tougher to do that, but
Just sonically you can
just
hide
but
a lot.
sonically, like if I'm not playing, I guarantee you, if you look at the Blue Coat show from last year, you know, shout out to Blue Coats. Hey, if you look at their show every single year, I guarantee you there's not a single member of that drum corps in the horn line that played every single note of that show. Nobody does.
No way.
Nobody
I don't play
does.
every note of the show.
No, I don't either, right? You can't. It's damn near impossible.
Yeah.
Okay,
You
so
do have to do every visual
you do
of
have
the
to
show.
You cannot hide visually. It's impossible, right?
Yeah.
Unless they stick you behind a prop or some crap like
Yeah,
that.
but everything that you're asked to do, you have to
you
do.
have to
right?
do it. And-
Otherwise,
yes.
immediately someone goes, "Oh, that person didn't go to open second.
Yep.
Or
Exactly.
that person was late on their plie
Right.
or whatever it is."
Yes, and it's the same thing. If you're standing in horn arc, right, and everybody's standing there nice and still, and you are falling apart, and you're doing this, it's the easiest thing. Light travels faster than sound,
Yep.
right? They say it all the time. And if
People
you will
listen
be-
with their eyes.
yes, you will be noticed way faster physically if you are not doing the things you're supposed to do physically, right?
Yep.
I think as the horns, there's leniency depending on the size of your horn. If you're a trumpet player and you can't hold your horn, go home. Don't even show up to my camps, right? Like I'll
How
stop
dare
it.
you?
How
Yeah.
dare you? Mellophones.
No.
I kind of feel the same way, but I give a little bit of leeway because it's a little more top heavy, and also you can't see anything. So people
Can't see crap. Yeah,
you can't see
sometimes
anything.
you,
So sometimes you're doing different things, but because you can't see anything. Baritones, again, unless you come from a high school where you're playing baritone pretty regularly, right? Because it's an odd instrument. There's a lot of trombone converts, right? Trombone is way easier, it's lighter than baritone. All this stuff is in here, right? And all this movement helps to relax the shoulders. But if you're a baritone player and you're just hammering it up here, or if you're going someplace like Phantom that has nothing but euphoniums, good lord, they're going to be a little bit more understanding of the fact that the horn is beating you up a little bit. And then tuba players are the same thing. You know, like
It's a big heavy animal.
it's a big heavy animal. You should be able to move that instrument, period. Right?
Yeah.
If you cannot move a tuba, stop auditioning for tuba. Right? I'm sorry, if you can't pick it up and manipulate it the way it needs to be manipulated, because
You're not gonna be able to run around on a field with it.
there's a
You're just
reason
not.
why musically you don't have to be as technically proficient, is because physically you are more proficient than most of those people, right?
Yeah.
You
You
have to
have
be
a
able to do
much bigger
Right.
visual and physical responsibility.
Absolutely, and it has nothing to do with
Yeah.
your size or your weight or anything else. It has to do with the skill that you bring to it, and go, can you hold it? Can you move it? Because they say it all the time. It's the big Buick on your
Yeah.
on your back. Like you cannot hide that thing because any little movement left or right or sideways or anything else, it gets seen instantly. So
Yeah.
when it comes to visuals and the horn lines, you have to, at bare minimum, you have to be able to manage the horn. Period.
Yep.
Period.
Yeah.
Right.
I think squeeze into a bit because my big point, I was trying to think, what are the biggest like points I can bring for music and visual? The music one was going to be like the whole don't hide thing.
Right.
Similar vein almost to visual. One of my first big pieces of advice would just be like, you have to learn how to put energy and effort into your movements.
Yes.
That's the biggest thing I learned, right? Over time is like, at no point in your movement, whether it's holding your horn or doing a step out or marching or doing visuals and anything like that, any part of your visual movement, if you look lazy at any point, it's an immediate big red flag, right? Because then you don't look like a performer. Right? Watch any top level drum corps. No one looks lazy while they're doing it.
Absolutely.
And if you watch a drum corps and people do look lazy, it sticks out immediately.
I
Right?
watched.
It's just a feel, right?
Yeah. Watch the end of the Phantom Regiment show last year, and watch. I was angry because of how easy it looked for them. And I know it's right after they did the big Z pool, right? And then they come power folding. If you watch the drill, because everybody's kind of focused on like this other stuff that's going on, but if you watch the drill and what they are doing at the end of their entire show, and they are hauling right all the way through that. Baritone players just
everyone with the mellophones.
Everybody with the mellophones are just standing inside those triangles and just crushing notes, right? They are hauling and they come into there and there's a close up of the one, and it's like two baritone players and I think it's a trumpet player in there, and they look like they just started block for the day.
Yeah.
I mean, it is just, and they are murdering sound out of their nose. It's unbelievable. I watched it. I was like, are those guys even playing? And I know they are. I was standing in front of them, and I was
hear how much they're playing.
There is so unbelievably loud, and I was like, the amount of training that Phantom must have done with their members last year has got to be unreal because they just looked money the entire show, and it was effortless. It was unbelievable. And we say this all the time, how much I crap on the Blue Devils all the time. I do feel like in years past the Blue Devils look like that. They look effortlse all the time.
Oh yeah, I mean that's like their biggest thing. They just look so relaxed.
I crap on them all the time because of course they're relaxed. They don't move anywhere. But I would be relaxed too.
Yeah. But even while they're moving and while they're doing the hard parts, they look confident. They look relaxed.
Yes. Yeah. So there's this fine line between, like you said, always look like you're doing something with intention. Always look like you're performing. There's too much of that too.
We see it a lot.
We see it a lot. I give who I crap on all the time for it. Heckman.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. Heckman is an overperformer.
Oh yeah.
And he is just there is you can be doing too much, right? It's the person that's like, I'm gonna hold my horn at like 10% is not good enough, 15%.
Their arms are up here.
Arms are all the way up here, right? And you're over trying and you're not, and that goes all the way back to the research and everything else. What is the course philosophy on horn angle management and everything else? Are you at 10%? Or are you at 15%? Or are you at flat? Right.
Yeah. We see it all the time, right? Learn how to be detail focused.
Yes.
Because I think if you're going to make a mistake in one direction or the other, it's better to have too much energy. But either way is a mistake.
Yes.
Right? We see all the time with people who like, for example, right? You look into how your core defines horns up. We tend to define our horns up with a half beat.
Right.
Horns up, right? It's an in time thing. It is a start and a stop, right? You get some people in there that are over enthusiastic and they're going,
yeah,
and you're like, you look wrong.
Yeah,
you look like I'm glad you're putting energy in, but you look like you don't know how to control your body.
Correct. That's exactly what happens. Yeah, you're doing it wrong, right? And great. I'm happy you put a ton of energy into it. I'm happy you think it looks cool.
Yeah.
Right. I'm happy that you can move your trumpet real fast. Good job, buddy. My mouthpiece weighs more than your trumpet most of the time. So like I got it.
It's always trumpets.
But it's always the trumpets. But that's it's a very good point for the trumpet players because the horn is so light. You can, without understanding how to control the instrument physically, the right way. It's
very easy to overshoot it.
It's very easy to Peter say all the time, overhyping it, right? And you can do those things. So you really have to be mindful of that kind of stuff. Tubas are on the opposite end of the spectrum. Like, most of the time they start out and you can do it pretty well. And overhyping, you can be out of time overhyping with a tuba too, but
Yeah.
most of the time you just get lazy with it because it's so heavy, because it just the physical strain of it just kind of beats you up throughout the day. So being able to maintain that becomes more difficult. And those are the differences between the instruments from top to bottom, is that they have their own difficulties. You have to understand the physical responsibility for each one of them and what that feels like. Which again, all that physical prep that you did before you got here, one of the things I said was put a horn in your hand and stand up straight and do the things you're supposed to do and understand what those things are, because that will aid you in the audition process, because now you know what everybody else is doing and how to do it correctly.
Yeah, right. Learn to focus on those little details. Like, so if you're in a dance block,
I was just going to move on to dance too. Now I'm going, man, the transition. All right.
Right. If you're in a dance block, be a pain about the details, right, to yourself.
Yes.
Right.
Okay.
That's the kind of things that you're gonna they're gonna make you stand out, right?
Right.
If you something that will train your body awareness, right? If you're going through some kind of visual, right, and in most DCI cores, you're gonna have your choreographer, the person who's teaching you these things, is going to be demonstrating the stuff to you.
Yes.
Right. That is the absolute best learning tool that you can have. It's just watching what they do and going, I'm going to do exactly that, right? And how detail focused can you get with it, right? If you have some kind of arm movement, are you looking at where they're ending, if they're ending parallel or something, or are you overhyping and going way out far, or are you just like standing here and like with your lazy arm, right? Learning how to focus on those details, and it's like, even if you can't do it all at once because it's hard to keep track of all the details, right? Hone in on something and be like, all right, my feet are the biggest thing that's moving right here doing this choreo move. Am I putting my feet, like, check in on yourself, right?
Right.
Am I moving my feet the same way that this person teaching me choreography is doing it? Right. And maybe you're letting some other stuff go in the meantime, and you can develop how to focus on that. But like, if you can focus on small things one at a time, right, and hone that skill, that will help you tremendously to actually do the right thing, and also come tour when you're getting choreo just thrown at you left and right.
Something that I try to focus on for myself personally, and something I think that really helps, and again helps me, is approaching the choreo side of things, because I come from a generation that does not do choreo, right?
Yeah, you have to basically learn over the past couple of years.
Yeah. I mean, it's the last
20 years of experience.
right. Yeah. So I don't understand. I know my body well, but I don't understand my body from that perspective, right? From a dance perspective, right? I always say, I'm like, oh no, I am doing that. And I look at myself on a video and I go, oh my God, I'm not even doing half of what I think I'm doing.
Yeah, right.
Some of it's because I'm old and I'm beat up and like I have problems, but I always try to approach things in a very uninhibited, right? Because I do think that many brass players have never done any of these things before. If you come from a dance background, maybe did some indoor color guard or whatever.
And more high school programs are incorporating
right.
modern movement and choreography, but most of them, most people, it's going to be unfamiliar territory.
It's unfamiliar territory. So your natural inclination is to be closed down a little bit.
Yeah.
And
to hide
within yourself,
just like you can do in music.
And then that's when you get things like this, and you get things like people are like doing like, let me do my kinesphere this way. Like it's not. You've got to just be, and I can't say it the way I want to say it, but like you just have to be very flowy, very flamboyant,
be big
with everything you're doing, and you have to have this idea of everybody should be looking at me right now, right? Look at what I am doing. I am doing this. And let somebody, it's kind of like playing too loud. Let somebody come up and make a correction. Hey, love the energy you got going on right now, but maybe a little bit less. Oh, okay, cool. Is it too much?
It is the better direction to go in, right? It's better to try and put too much energy in than not enough.
Yeah. The dance, and it's again, it's about physical body control, right? If you are somebody that still doesn't understand your body very well, and I can't tell you to move just your big toe, and all you move is just your big toe, and then flex your ankle, and then can you tighten your calves right now? Just because I asked you to tighten your calves, you don't have really good body awareness yet. You have to build that. Like those are things you can sit on the couch at home and go, let me just flex my quads right now. Right, boom, and now I'm flexing my quads. Am I flexing my quads and squeezing my glutes at the same time? Yeah, probably am. Okay, how do I do them separately, right? And you have to mentally work on engaging different body parts. That is what dance is all about, right? And the modern drum corps dance and the modern drum corps activity is that, can you engage individual body parts that way? And putting max effort into it and being receptive, like you said, to all the new choreo that they're chucking at you because they're throwing it at you at high speeds. You know,
Yeah.
before you ask questions, make sure that you were paying attention. That
Yep.
I can't stand that. It drives me absolutely nuts. Is that there'd be people like, can you say that again? Or let me ask you a question about that. And I know it was already answered. And the only reason why they're asking a question is because they didn't freaking pay attention the first time because they're too busy talking about it or doing something they're not supposed to do or trying to figure out a different move because they think that that's more important than listening to the instructor. The most important thing you can do in a dance block or a choreo block is freaking listen.
Yeah, you've got
Pay
to learn
attention.
how to be a sponge.
Yes.
Especially in choreo because there's so much
Yep.
going on, right? Yeah, you should be a sponge in every
Yeah,
portion, right? But especially just any kind of choreo and dance portion,
Yeah.
it's going to be the most unfamiliar to you, and it's going to
Yes.
have the most like details and information, right? And yeah, you just have to learn how to be like,
Yes.
I'm just going to be a vessel for
Yeah.
this knowledge,
Just
and it will
shut-
flow through me.
Just shut up and pay attention.
Yeah.
Just shut
Shut
your
up
mouth.
and do your job.
Shut up and do your job. Shut up and pay attention, right?
Yep.
And I can't stress enough pay attention because it is the most unfamiliar for most of us, right?
Yeah.
I'll say 99.9% of the horn line players is the most unfamiliar
Yep.
place to be in. So you're going to overthink it, you're going to overanalyze it, you're going to be hyper focused on things that you think are important and then maybe they're not, right? So just listen. Just follow. For all my visual people out there who are saying, thank God I'm saying that. Yes, just shut up and listen. Okay.
Yeah.
Stop trying to figure it all out. All right. In one movement, you're not going to, right? Just watch and do, right? Just watch and do the best you can.
Yeah.
And that's really what they want to see because they want to see the fact that you're giving effort and they want to see the fact that you can, like you said, sponge and absorb what's going on.
Yeah, right.
Right.
Because there is such a thing as appearing too like eager and focused and being like, oh wait a minute,
Yeah.
and be like,
yeah.
calm down.
Yeah.
We'll get to that.
Where's my pinky supposed to be in this movement right here? I don't
Yeah.
understand. Should my wrist be
Is my
bent at a
left eyebrow
45 or a
supposed to be
55?
raised
You know, like,
slightly?
yeah. Well, what am I doing with my face? You know,
Yeah.
like, shut up.
Yeah.
You know,
I
it'll
think-
come.
yeah.
Don't worry. You know,
I think this, proper etiquette for questions, I think, leads us into a good,
into the etiquette
yeah,
section
a
of
good section. Yeah, one of the things we want to talk about was etiquette,
Mm,
right? Etiquette is a huge part of drum corps.
Yes.
I'm sure if you're in a marching band and you're a competitive marching band, you already are familiar with it, right? In drum corps, organization and precision is the game,
Right.
right? And as a result, rehearsals and camps and everything have to run a certain way, and it has to have a certain flow to it, and you have to know how to fit into that, right? So, in addition to being a sponge about the actual educational information and instructional information that you're getting, you have to be receptive and open and cognizant and thinking about what the etiquette is.
Yeah.
Right? Because I think the etiquette is sort of like the most direct way to communicate to the staff the attitude that you have.
I
If that
agree with
makes sense.
Yeah, that makes total sense.
Right? Like if I look at, learn what the proper standby position is and
Yeah.
how to get and when it's called, you get to it fast.
Yeah.
Okay. One of the worst things you can do with etiquette is just be lazy in your response.
Right.
And they say set and you go and bring it up. It's like immediately I'm like, this person isn't trying to be a part of the process,
yeah,
right? They're not trying to fit in.
There's no effort. There's no energy.
Yeah, right?
Right.
Right. Learn what the etiquette is. I think a great piece of advice is locate a vet. If you know who the section leaders are, for example, or you know who the horn sergeant's going to be, find a vet and watch them and go, what are they doing every time each one of these commands is called?
Right.
Right. And try to emulate that.
Yep.
Right. Because they know what the process is, right? And there's going to be a learning curve for you.
Yeah. Of course.
Right. But like if you find that one person to lock in on, you find a couple of good, like confident vets who, have earned that sort of confidence, right? You follow them and they will set a solid example.
Yeah.
Right. Hopefully.
Drum corps is a feel thing. It always has been for me personally. Right.
Yeah.
So if I feel out of place in what is going on around me,
Yeah.
I'm doing something wrong. Right?
Yeah.
So if I am not moving my arms at the right speed, if I am not standing at standby and I'm messing around, I have a sensation of something is wrong. Right. And immediately my first thought is, oh, what am I doing wrong right now? As soon as I become to my own realization, right? Because I'm not perfect by any means, and I, do my own thing a lot of times too here and there. But, when I get to the point, I'm like, oh, everybody else is not doing something that I'm doing right now. I should probably not be doing that too. Right.
Yeah.
And again, you said the word cognizant, and I think that's really the biggest word to use.
Yeah.
Is that if you're not aware and cognizant of your surroundings and what's going on, and you're not focused on those things, you should be, right.
Mm-hmm.
I say this all the time, like I'm ADD to the max, man. I was an original ADD kid, when they decided to come up with that term.
Yeah.
And I always said it was
Why
my
are these kids so weird?
Yeah.
We should make a term for this.
it's my ultimate superpower, because it's attention deficit. If you can just I can pay attention to 7 things at one time, right? So if I could just tell myself I'm going to pay attention to the 7 things I'm supposed to be paying attention to, then I'm really focused in.
Yeah.
Right. I am hyper focused in on those things. So, and most of us band kids that's what we are. We're ADD or ADHD to some extent. We're all over the freaking place. And so use that power to your advantage and go, I'm going to be hyper focused on at least this thing or that thing, or I'm going to be absorbent of all the things. And you've got to push out the nonsense that's going on around you and just be like, I can't be thinking about, what I'm doing next week. I can't be thinking about how bad my back hurts. I can't
What I want for lunch.
Yeah. Like, when is this block over? What is this
stressing
person
about your
saying?
auditions while you're supposed to be
focused on what you're doing. Right. Yeah.
in
All
breathing
those
block or
things,
something.
just lead to one, bad etiquette, and they're going to lead to stress. And that stress is going to cause you to be less than what you want to be, less than the person you could be.
Yeah.
Right. So, when it comes to etiquette, you have got to be, it's the same thing we said earlier. It's vision versus sound, right?
Yeah.
Don't be the guy telling everybody what to do. Be the guy showing everybody what to do.
Yep.
Right.
Especially if you are new to the drum corps scene.
Oh my God, yeah.
I would honestly recommend, especially when you start off.
Don't say a word.
Exactly. Yeah.
Just
try
be
silent
quiet.
block.
Yep.
Yeah. Also, because not to be mean, but what do you have to talk about? What do you do?
Yeah,
What do you do? Like, you're here to audition for a spot and to prove
Right,
yourself. Like,
Yeah.
if people are chatting, you can do it. But like in general, like,
Yeah. When practice
it's
is
an easier.
happening.
Yeah. It's a much safer bet, especially when you're early on in camps.
Absolutely.
Just worry about you and focus on other things.
Yep.
Right. And where you'd be like, am I doing what I'm supposed to be doing right now?
Exactly.
Right.
Maybe at best, like wait for them to be a break, wait for the break, and then ask the person standing next to you what's going on. Hey, man, I didn't quite grab like what this is. Could you? Oh yeah, it's this. Okay, cool, thanks. Right, and then be appreciative, be that way, and I think that kind of leads us in, because etiquette's so important, but I think it kind of leads us into the social aspect, because they kind of cross over each other, because you're going to want to be social when you're supposed to be
drum corps is a
in the
social
high
activity.
Yeah, and you're supposed to be in the high etiquette form of things. Like when I get tired, all I want to do is chat. I get super chatty, and I'm like, I get spacey, and I'm like, I'm so tired. I do not want to be doing, especially early season. God, it drives me bonkers. After 27 years or whatever, I think it's 18 years on the field for me coming up. Like I don't.
There's a reason a lot of vets are like,
doing.
You call me in the spring.
Yeah,
if you have a hole.
Doing an 8 to 5 yet again is like, I think I got it, guys. Thanks. Been doing this for about 30 years. I feel pretty good and pretty confident with my skill set there.
Yeah.
But I still do it, and I still put in there because I want to be the bastion of etiquette, and I want to be.
Yeah, you want to set a good example.
Yeah, I want to set a good example, but also show everybody around me that I'm still capable of learning, to include the instructional staff, right? Because I don't want them beating me up. I know. I think we talked about this before, or I think Jack and I had this conversation. I remember when I came back to Reading, and I was such the talk of the town, because I had been around
You were a big presence. I mean,
yes,
it's a big personality.
Yeah, I'm a very big personality, and I wanted to come in and just go. I didn't want to be the old version of myself, that everybody because the rumor mill and all the
vets or people on admin
people
who
were
have been there for
like,
a long
oh,
time.
I remember this guy, and just the stories build up over the years, and I was like, that's not who I am. Not only not who I never ever was, but that's not who I am now. So I had to come in and kind of reestablish myself a little bit. And even though I've been doing it for years and doing those things, I was like, I'm going to be hyper focused on learning. I'm going to be hyper focused on listening to the instructional staff and see what they have to offer, because I am always learning something every single year.
Yeah.
And there's always something new to learn. So no matter how good I get, or how, many years I've done this for, or where I come from, I do those things. And I make sure I come up with the etiquette. But I am probably the biggest proponent of social interaction in a drum corps too.
Yeah.
Because I never shut the it's like I'm always going, and I'm so happy to meet people and see people all the time.
Yeah.
And I'm just I get so distracted. I'm like a kid in a candy store all the time.
And we've talked about this. Like we've talked a lot in these past 2 episodes about like what to do about the drum corps part of drum corps. But I would say maybe like a third of the reason why we keep coming back is the drum corps part of it and the performance. The other 2/3 is the people.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's the relationships that you form and the camaraderie you form,
Yep.
right? It's a huge part
Yeah.
of the activity, and it should be.
Yeah.
And it's amazing that it is.
It's a huge
Right.
part of life, right? And
Yeah,
because
right.
this becomes so much of your life for such a short/long period of time,
Yeah,
depending on what
exactly.
you're doing, it should be a major part of it, right?
Yeah. And so even though the early camps, you're going to want to tend towards the work part, right? Focus on the work part more than the socializing part. The socializing part does come into it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So, what I mean, yeah. What do you think for new people that are coming in?
I
with
always
this little
like-
piece of advice.
There's this balance between being a wallflower. Okay, and for those who don't know what that means just kind of standing around and absorbing what's going on, right? You're just you're in the presence of what's happening, right? If you have good cores, and I think that we do this fairly well, like membership day, first couple of camps, we all sit together as a mellophone section. Right?
Yeah.
So that
a lot of times vets will try to include.
Right, to include, because you don't want rookies to kind of just be hanging off into the corner, just eating their sandwiches all quiet and by themselves. Like, come
Yeah.
on over, let's have a conversation, right? As a newer member, be more absorbent in that time than conversationally, right? Let somebody ask you something, right?
Yeah.
Let somebody come and go, hey man, where are you from? Oh, I'm from this place over here.
Yeah.
Oh, have you tried out any place else? Like, most of the time, your more comfortable people will be more engaging, right?
Yeah.
And just let them ask you questions. Like, I know I am that way with every single person, as many as the people as I can get a hold of on membership day.
Yep.
I go and talk to every single person I can, so that they don't have to be the person to do that, because it's uncomfortable, number one.
Yeah,
And number
because,
two,
and because you have an advantage because you're comfortable in this space
Yeah,
and in
correct.
the world of drum corps,
Right.
and they're not. Right, new people aren't.
and we know that, right? And your vets know that.
We
right?
remember being rookies.
Yeah, we remember
even
being-
though sometimes it was
last
many years ago.
last millennia.
Yeah,
So
Yeah.
it literally, and so but we know that, so we understand the plight and the difficulty that comes with that, but we also appreciate when a member is just that wants to be around but doesn't really know how to quite interact and is patient with it, and go, hey, we'll engage you, man, I promise, right? So from a social aspect,
Yeah.
just feel the room, right? Be like, I feel like kids nowadays have no social skills whatsoever, so I'm sorry for you guys out there, but like, reading a room is just part of growing up. Like, you go
it's
in,
a very important social. Yeah, thank you.
like going into and go, what the heck's going on in here? I'm not going to come in with some different weird energy, right? Let me just see how everything's moving, and the best way you can do that is just be being quiet. Get off your phone, right?
Yeah.
Get off your phone and just see
I
what's
think,
going on.
honestly,
Listen to conversations.
Except for a few check-ins with your parents, maybe during the weekend, your phone should generally not exist on the drum corps weekend. That's my
no,
that's
I
both of our
totally
personal
agree.
takes.
Yeah, like,
I put my phone in my backpack.
Yeah.
And like now for section leadery stuff, and I'm sure next year even more, I'll be checking it sometimes just because I want to stay like informed.
yeah, what's going on?
But like most of the time, I'm like, I shove that thing in my backpack. Like I get to the end of a 12-hour rehearsal day, my phone's at like 70% battery
Yeah.
because it's not been doing anything.
because I haven't touched
Because
it
why
once.
would I need it?
Yeah, yeah.
Right.
Even at lunchtime, like when I want to pick my phone up on check, I'll pick it up for like, I don't know, 10 minutes, make sure everything's like kosher
Yeah.
everywhere, and then I'll put it away.
I'll do my games. On
Yeah.
like I'll
Yeah,
play
pick up-
Wordle
yeah,
and
pick up.
connections and whatnot.
See,
but-
I thank God, knock on wood, I don't get back into games again, because I'll be like on my phone 40 hours a day.
Yeah.
But like when I want to talk to people. Like, I want to
Yeah.
be social. I want to interact. I want to have friends. I want to
Yeah.
talk. That's what you need to be too, right? Take
Yep.
your phone, tuck it away, and if you don't have anything to say, just listen. Just be
Exactly,
a part of the
conversation.
community,
Just
right? Of what's going
sit
on.
there and listen, and
Right.
like you said, a lot of times vets will be like, "Hey, man, you
Yeah.
know, yada yada. Here's
Right.
conversational entrance."
Uh,
I've got some. Not to be negative, Nancy. I've got a couple of conversational don'ts.
Oh, okay. I think that's good. Like, you should be giving advice on both sides. right?
especially because I hope
I already know what you're
a
gonna say.
lot of people. You probably will.
Yeah.
A lot of people, who hopefully this will reach and this will affect, and they'll take our advice on this, are younger high schoolers and early college kids, right?
Mhm.
So, as a good general rule, curb the talk about your high school band and how
Yeah.
great it is,
You're right.
right?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Don't cool it.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's okay.
Ease off the gas a bit.
Yeah.
If it comes up, bring it up and
Sure.
whatnot. Or
If
someone
somebody asks you
Yeah,
about
if someone asks about it, yeah.
Right,
but
right,
like,
right.
it's just like
it.
you will stick out if you
Yeah.
do it, right? And and part of the thing is like, I was talking a little earlier today about this of like, it almost feels like, when you get into the job world,
Hmm.
When you're entering, you're fresh out of high school or college or whatever, you put all of like your internships
Mm.
and your clubs and your stuff on your resume because that's what you're doing, right? Once you're in the working world for several years, it'll be your freaking internship.
Yeah.
Who cares?
Yeah, right. Nobody
Right?
gives a crap
That
about
stuff
that,
is
right.
important when you're starting off, but once you've been in the field a couple of years, like that stuff doesn't really matter that
Right.
much. And for a lot of the vets, it's like there's like this
Yeah.
is just that's just how it is. It's like, you
Right.
know, you talk about your high school early on, but like once you get a few years in drum corps and you're a vet, it's like the high school stuff, it's kind of like, not to be mean, but it's kind of like nobody cares.
Yeah.
Right? It's
yeah.
a neat thing to talk about sometimes, but if you're don't harp on it.
Yeah.
Right? I'm not saying
yeah.
I'm not gonna say don't mention it ever at all.
Yeah.
It's
Right.
just something to talk about. It's your previous experience. But like don't be all like, my band did this, my band, my band, my band, right?
It's I use the rule of like threes, right? Bring it up once because somebody asked you about, because
Yeah,
somebody
exactly.
asked you, you know, oh, where are you from?
Or it's the
Blah, blah, blah.
conversation
Or
topic
it's
at
part of the
hand, right?
conversation, right? Everybody else is talking about their high school. Great, you know.
Yeah.
Bring it up a second time because once again, it's part of the conversation. That's the only time it should really come up. If you start bringing it up a third time when nobody's prompted you and you're just like, hey guys, you know, blah blah blah, and like
Yeah.
now you're starting to wear out the welcome of the conversation just a little bit. I think.
Yeah.
I mean, dude, I gotta tell you, I have been around some younger members that it's okay that you don't have experience.
Yeah.
That's okay. You don't.
That's what
I
you're
feel
here
like
to get.
I feel like young people, and because I was this way too, right? It was everybody else has this world of experience,
Yeah.
right?
And
these
especially
things-
at a core like Buccaneers, like
Right.
a lot of the stuff that we talk about at lunch is memories and stuff from previous drum
Yeah.
corps seasons.
you don't have to add to it with other things outside of what we're talking about or what's going on in order to fit inside of it,
Yeah.
right? That's
Again,
not what's not
you
what's not what
can
has
when
been.
it's appropriate, but
Yeah,
you
and
don't.
it's
You shouldn't feel pressure to. Like,
yeah,
you don't.
it's just relax. Like
cool, dude,
we're
yeah.
probably you're going to be accepted a little bit more by just sitting back and letting other people accept you in rather than you forcing yourself in
Yeah.
with other information. Because that's really what I think it is. It's a nervous thing. It was
Yeah,
for,
exactly.
It was for me as
Oh,
a kid.
yeah.
You know, it's like I talk about this, I talk about that. It happens all the time. If you're a high school kid and you marched and you go back to your high school, calm down. Nobody gives a crap that you marched drum corps, right? Because your
Exactly.
high school
That's what I was gonna say.
because
It's
those
like
things don't
the same thing in
yeah,
reverse.
they're not
No one likes the kid that comes back from drum corps and won't stop talking about how he was in drum corps.
Yeah,
Right,
exactly.
rehearsal
I'm like, all
marching
right, and I know because I was that guy, you know. Because
Oh, yeah.
I think
Especially
everybody
after
is.
tour, I was
Yeah, of course. You're like, oh, you guys won't believe the kind of summer I had. You know, like I totally get it. You know, but at some point, like say it once, great. Say the second time, you're okay. The third time, once you get
Yeah.
into number three, like, ugh,
Yeah, and so like a little piece of advice, right? If you get lunch with the vets and you're sitting with some of the vets because they want to include some of the newer members, right? And they're talking about drum corps stories and stuff. Try instead of like trying to relate and be like, oh well, I something and bring up high school. Instead, just like ask some questions about it.
I
Right?
was just
Dude,
thinking the same
ask
thing.
questions because
Yeah.
drum corps stories are fun
Yeah.
and they're very funny or they're wild
Yeah,
and weird, right? Just ask drum corps. Just ask questions,
Questions,
right?
yeah.
Right,
That-
because then that will not only keep the conversation going and you can feel like you're a part of it without needing to like interject with stuff. It'll also show the vets that like you're interested in what's.
Yeah.
You're first of all interested in them as
Right.
people, which
Right,
is
right,
always nice to feel. And also, you're interested in the activity. You just want to like hear
Right.
more about it.
right. People, I can't agree with you more. When I was in the Army and I taught leadership and I taught everything else too. My first things I would always tell people is that never say anything about yourself. Always ask questions of the other person.
Yeah, it's a good
Repetitively.
general.
Yeah,
right?
until
And if someone asks questions about you, that's
there
an
it is.
open.
You
Yeah,
do it until they ask questions back to you. Right.
Yeah.
You just ask questions. Hey, where are you from? Blah blah blah. You know, and like, oh, you know, what did you do in high school? Blah blah blah. You know,
Yeah.
and whatever. And then until they're tired of talking about themselves, and they go, oh, where are you from? Ah, now you get to talk about yourself, right?
Yeah, right.
You're leading them into having a conversation with you, and that can help ease some of that tension. And most of the time, nobody's gonna look at you sideways if you ask them a question. You know, especially if it's something about what they're already talking about.
exactly.
You
Yeah.
know, that's super simple.
Yeah. Obviously, there's a lot of nuance here. Social interactions are filled with them, but like, you don't have to pretend like you never marched high school band or anything.
Yeah,
but like, it's just some good general guidelines based on the kinds of social faux pas that we often see
Yeah, it's it's the
from
struggle.
newer members. Yeah.
Yeah.
My second don't is just a general rule. Don't talk about other drum corps
Oh,
that are, especially ones that are in a similar competitive vein as the one that you're in, as a
okay.
general rule,
Yep.
right? Again, it's not a forever rule, right?
Right.
At Blue Knights, we talked a ton about other cores that
Sure.
were there, but like, especially when you're there on audition day, like one of the worst things that I think you can do in terms of from another member's perspective, right?
Yeah.
One of the worst things that you can do is make it seem like you really want to be marching at this core over
Yeah,
here
right.
and not the core that you're at.
Right. Right. Right.
Right? I should have. This was insane, but like, you'll see kids a lot of times in at Bucks showing up and they've got a drum corps shirt for world class corps like this, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Totally fine.
Sure.
We love
Yeah.
those
Like,
world-class
I'm wearing it
corps.
right
Yeah,
now.
exactly,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. Exactly.
I'll wear a Coats or a Blue Devil shirt or something
Sure.
to
Don't
right
wear
because it's
Blue
not in the
Devils.
same. I will. I'm gonna buy one and wear it just to mess with you. But like I remember showing up to a Boston audition camp in 17. And there was a kid wearing like a Crown shirt. I was like, dude, what are you doing?
Yeah.
You're auditioning for a different top 12 core right now.
Yeah. Right.
Like you didn't have anything else. Like because I think it, you know, a lot of kids approach it, you know, they're like, I'm excited about this activity and I want to wear this thing.
Sure,
but
sure.
like, there's a certain point where I'm like, dude, like, you don't want to give the impression that you really want to be somewhere
Somewhere
else.
else.
That's the
Yeah,
real
yeah.
thing.
Yeah. I got you.
Right. You can obviously talk about other cores. You can talk about the shows. You can talk about what's cool. Heck, you know, sometimes you can even talk about, you know, if you're auditioning at other places.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
just as long as you do not make it seem like this is a fallback, right? And it might be, but
Yeah.
don't make it seem like
that.
that.
I have the same feeling, but in kind of almost in reverse a little bit. Don't go to a different organization and talk smack about another organization that you were either a part of or
Yeah,
that
don't talk smack either.
yeah,
Yeah.
or that you were a part of, or maybe someplace else you auditioned at, right? Don't be like, you know, and I'll just use random, you know, like don't go to, you know, the 42 Buckaroos and be like, you guys won't understand what Spirit of Atlanta was like. You know, they're a bunch of trash, you know, like nobody. One, if you talk bad about a core, what's to say you won't talk bad about the core you're auditioning for right now when you leave there?
Yeah.
Right.
Mhm.
Nobody likes a negative Nancy, right? Like and it doesn't matter. I've been in 3 different drum corps in my career for, you want to count, you know, troopers. And I've never spoken bad about any of them, no matter where I went or what I want to, right? And you won't, but like Reading has such a rap sheet everywhere they go, and like people want to be like, you know, like they want to get. I'm like, no, God, it was great. You know, it was an awesome place to be.
Yeah.
You know,
Especially if you're talking to other members of the corps.
exactly. Like, you know, it's the same thing. There's a lot of groups that have some bad juju around them because one person feels a certain way or a different play, right? And I was either march with those people or anything else, and I go, you know, like when I came back to Reading, you know, Reading and Cavs are like mortal enemies all the time, right? And like, do you know how many, like, it was, I don't want to call it hate mail, but when I went to march with Cavs, people I haven't talked to in years, like years and years, like a decade, and they were like, what are you doing? I had a Facebook message. What are you doing? Yeah. And I'm like, what are you guys talking about?
What do you think you're doing right now?
Yeah, like what are you? Is this for real? Is this April Fool? Like what's going on right now? Right?
Like members of Bucks?
Oh
do
yeah,
that?
oh yeah. Like current people that are involved in the organization reaching out and be like, like I'm like, guys,
Yeah.
like it's okay. Like don't worry.
March, especially
know,
in a year where
and
we
then-
were not fielding a core.
Yeah, and then those same
Yeah.
people, when I came back to Reading at 22, they gave me like the side eye about it, and I was like. They're like,
Traitor.
yeah, it's just trade. I'm like, calm down. Like, I had a great time.
Guys, it's banned.
Yeah, I have never spoken, I shouldn't say never, but I very seldomly speak poorly of an organization because I spent time there and they gave me something, right?
Yeah.
You can always talk positively about things, right?
Yeah.
And along with the social idea, staying on the positive realm, no matter what you were talking about. It's the same thing we talk about high schools. Like, don't ever talk about your high school if they're so great. Don't talk about your high school if they're really shitty. You know, like, oh, my kids in my high
Yeah.
school, they don't pay attention. They don't know how to do this, right? You know, like, you don't need to talk about those things. Like, it's okay.
Yeah.
Just,
You just bring in negativity in.
yeah, just be like, hey, you know what? I really like it here because I like the energy here. That's the same sentence as everybody at my high
Yep.
school sucks, right?
Yeah.
This is so much. I really enjoy being here because the level of, you know, whatever is better. Okay, great. That's good. You don't have to add anything else. You know, just
Yeah, right.
be
Focus on the
positive.
positive
Right.
comparison, not the negative one. That's a great
Exactly.
piece of advice.
Exactly. So, and I think that's a, you know, a good place to kind of leave off is we start to get ranty and tangenty, with certain things.
Yeah, as naturally happens.
As it naturally happens. So for those of you out there that are going out for auditions, when you get there, there's a lot of stuff, obviously. It's an hour worth of stuff we just talked about. And that doesn't mean you have to be perfect at all of them. What it means is take the advice that you feel is necessary for you and then begin to apply it.
Yeah.
What we talk about and have talked about is really just our observations of decades of experience, but also, knowing what instructional staff has looked for and the kind of people that not only that they're looking for, but that we are looking for to be around as well too.
You're going to be marching right next to us.
Yeah,
right?
you're going to be right next to us, and we are as passionate as anybody is about this activity. And the people who are doing drum corps are the same way.
So, hey, maybe that's one more little like piece of advice is like, if you're hanging around and you're with vets, right? You can read the room a bit, but like ask me like, hey, like, what do you think I should be focusing on? Like, what do you think is an important thing to be focusing on?
What a great last thing to leave on. Yeah, 100%. 100%. Ask the question. Hey man, like I'm here, like learning, I'm trying to figure things out. Like what's your, if you had to give somebody a piece of advice that you wish you had from membership day.
Yeah.
What
be
is
like,
it?
yeah, hey, you guys have gone through this audition process 3 or 4 or 5 times by now. Like what's your best piece of advice? You know?
And then listen to them.
Yeah.
And then take that advice and apply. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
and I think, the last thing that we'll leave off, we had it as a bullet point, but I think we've sort of interwoven it. When you go into a camp, you go into an audition, you are not going to do everything perfectly. You just aren't. Neither of us are, and we've been doing this for far longer than any of you, right?
Right.
You're not going to do everything perfect. But we've talked at length about this before, so I think we can just leave it as an end note, right? You have to learn to not get hung up on the mistakes that you are going to make. Right. Instead, you take them and you go, all right, how can I not do this next time? How can I improve? Right. Because again, you're going to make mistakes somewhere. A staff member is going to see you make mistakes or flub something, and they're going to observe how you react to it. Right.
Yes, correct.
If you shut down and you like curse yourself out and you internalize suddenly
general negative behavior towards yourself.
Right. They're going to see that and they're going to be like, this person might have the attitude, right? Whereas they see you make a mistake and they see you lock in and focus and like just get right back in and get right back on the horse.
Yeah.
They're going to go, that's a person that I want to hear.
The attitude. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Self-awareness. We say it all the time, recovery's on the sheets, right? It's part of the evaluation process of a competitive activity is that can you recover from when things get wild, right?
Yeah.
So
I remember in my music audition, my first in-person camp, I was going through it and I was playing well and my chops felt good. I went to the audition and I kept like airballing the higher notes in the range. I remember being like, for a second, like I like got up to one and I missed it like the 3rd or 4th time or something. I remember kind of just being like, God, and like, showing it a little bit.
Yeah.
And luckily the guy who was auditioning me was a very cool dude. He's very laid back. He made me feel very like comfortable while in there. And he was like, hey man, come on, don't let me see you sweat.
Yeah.
Right. He was just like, he was nice and encouraging, but he said an important piece of advice was like, right.
Yeah.
You got to own it. You can't get caught up on your own mistakes, right? You can recognize them. You should.
Yeah.
Right. But don't let it consume you.
Yeah. They're lessons. They're lessons for a later time.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
And
move
then,
on.
I didn't just let that be like, oh my God, my audition wasn't as good as I wanted to. I missed the high notes. All right. I told you it was like almost like a mini lesson. For the back like 5 minutes of that, I didn't let that affect me. I just listened and I absorbed what he said and I tried, to apply it. And because I recovered, I think, I don't know if I would have gotten a callback if I had not, done that, if I had not recovered that way.
Yeah. Recovery is an immediate process, right? It's a process in the moment. And then there's lessons to take and apply for later, obviously. Like we talk about, taking in information and then applying them and trying to make it better. But recovery happens in the moment for yourself. And can you do that? How well can you do that? And can you move on? It's like the tempo keeps going, man. Just because you missed that note doesn't mean you can keep playing it or keep trying to hit it. The rest of the band is moving, like you got to keep going. I know you missed your dot, but don't worry. There'll be other dots to make.
Yeah. And I think there's a reason why recovery is on the sheets and why, see a lot of people talk and look at how maybe a show is judged. Like, oh, well, there was a mistake here. Or there was a drop here. There's something.
Yeah, there's things.
And I always viewed, I'm like, it's because the mistakes don't matter as much as what the consistent performance is.
Yes.
A mistake can happen at any moment.
Right.
It's one variable being tweaked, right? But if I see someone who's consistently performing at like a B level versus someone who's consistently performing at A level and makes one mistake, I don't really care about the mistake that much. I
Right.
care that for the rest of the time they were performing at A level,
Exactly.
right?
Yep.
And the instructors know this, the staff knows this. The staff knows that mistakes and flubs and things like that will happen. They're more concerned with how you are performing the other 95% of the time.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep. Totally agree. So, and that's a good place to leave on because they really are concerned about how you are doing things most of the time.
Yeah.
Right. And that's all it is. And it applies to every piece of advice we've already given is that, what are you doing and how can you get better at it? So,
Right. If you make a flub halfway through your audition, don't tank the back half just because you like get to your head.
And the last thing I'll say, because we keep saying last things, but don't
The last thing.
don't cut yourself. Right.
Yeah.
And that's what recovery is all about, right?
Don't give up on yourself.
Don't give up on yourself. Don't cut yourself. Don't not come back. Don't, just don't stop. Just keep going.
Yeah, we talked
right?
about not bringing ego, but don't bring the opposite of that ego, right?
You can't bring apathy, and
you
just
gotta,
be like,
you gotta,
oh, no.
you gotta leave the ego at home, but you have to come in and be like, I'm going to do everything I can to earn this spot here.
Correct. Yep.
Right.
Exactly.
Like, it's not sending yourself home early.
Yep.
Right. That's
exactly.
always the worst thing we see is when kids are like, oh, I can't do that. I'm just gonna.
Yeah, I'm out.
I'm
right.
out.
Yeah. That's
We couldn't. You're never gonna know what you can grow into if you just if
let
you quit
somebody else.
early.
Let somebody else tell you no. That's okay.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. So that's it.